Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Antarctica. Antarctica is the last discovered continent, and as I always say, in the early 19th century, people didn't know if the peninsula that we're going to explore was an island or connected to the main land of Antarctica. So the human history of Antarctica is extremely recent. This is a privilege to be here. This is an extreme remote place, and this is the last wilderness on Earth. We hope to find with you great wildlife encounters, representative of the great continents, different species of penguins, of course. Why not some larger marine mammals like whales? Why not orcas and seals? We hope to bring you to fantastic places, and we wish you a welcome on board National Geographic Explorer.
So we've headed out into the Drake Passage after leaving Ushuaia, and we're now out here in the middle of the Southern Ocean. This part of the Southern Ocean, the Drake Passage, is notorious for turbulent seas, lots of wind and swell, but we've had a relatively calm passage and we've seen lots of wildlife along the way. So we've completed our journey across the infamous Drake Passage, and we've now arrived at an archipelago that's called the South Shetland Islands. The South Shetland Islands are a small archipelago north of the continent, and it provides us a great introduction to our experience here in the Antarctic. We're exploring False Bay. In False Bay, we found lots of ice, we've seen close encounters with glaciers, and we also found a leopard seal on an ice floe. This has been a great introduction to our voyage. We've seen lots of great things, and we're really looking forward to the voyage ahead.
Well, we're having an awesome day. It's snowing and it's windy, but we just saw some killer whales, more specifically some type B killer whales, probably small Bs. Huge group of them, probably 40, 45, maybe 50 whales. They were grouped by matrilines, which is typically all the whales swimming with their mother and their grandmother, because killer whales are matriarchal. They will swim with their mothers their whole life, and we often see them grouped up with grandmother and their siblings. Well, the call from our expedition leader came at 6 a.m. this morning, and it's windy and cold. It was so worth it. Fantastic way to start our day.
So here we are on our first day in Antarctica, and we've already made landing on the continent at Brown Bluff. We are surrounded by thousands and thousands of Adelie penguins. We're at a colony here with gentoos surrounding the Adelie colony. We've got snow petrels nesting up on the bluff. We've got kelp gulls nesting. It is bird paradise, it's penguin paradise.
This is so much better than any wonderland you can ever see. It's like a storybook. The penguins are everywhere, and we're on land in Antarctica, and it's just wonderful.
The Adelies here have nested fairly early in the season. In early November, they probably laid their first eggs, and now the chicks are quite large and starting to crush to form large masses. We've seen the same with gentoos further up in the colony. They have quite large chicks right now. We have a beach next to us here where the Adelies are accessing the water. They go on in mass. They often come all together before going in and then sit there and make a decision about whether they're all ready to go in or not, and then they'll all dive in mass, going around the icebergs, keeping an eye out for leopard seals, which frequent this area. It's a beautiful day here with light snow, great visibility, very little wind. It's just a great day for our first landing in Antarctica.
This morning we're standing on Paulette Island, home to I don't know how many, 20,000 pairs of breeding Adelie penguins, which I'm sure you can hear. It's a historic place. 1903, there was a Swedish expedition came here. The remains of the building behind me that you can see are from that period, because the men had planned to be here. It wasn't a question of being stranded, it wasn't a question of survival. But the rescue ship didn't come when they thought, and there's a whole story unravels with amazing coincidences. Everybody got rescued. It's quite a happy ending. But it's good to be here. It's good to be with the ship, seeing this historic place, and quite a different terrain from anything we've seen before.
So here on Paulette Island, we are surrounded by a massive colony of Adelie penguins. And Adelies really are a true Antarctic species. They only breed here in Antarctica. And it's not every trip that we have the opportunity to spend time with Adelies. They typically breed deep in the Weddell Sea, which is often further away than we're able to get because of ice conditions and weather. But it's just been an awesome opportunity for us weather-wise to land here. There's a fair amount of swell typically, which prevents landing and exploration of colonies like this, but today has been just a perfect day for it. And it's a really fascinating stage of the life cycle of these penguins. It's incredibly noisy, the smell is really intense. These penguins at this stage it's kind of like the last ditch feeding effort for these growing chicks. So some of the chicks are actually grouping up together in what we call creches, where both parents are out feeding. So they've left the chick alone and the chicks are huddling together for warmth. One of the ways these penguins survive these cold waters and cold outdoor temperatures is by waterproofing their feathers. But the chicks are just covered in down, so they don't have this waterproof feather capability. So the only way they can stay warm is by huddling together and waiting until their parents come back to feed them. So it's utter chaos here at the moment, but it's a really important time for these birds.
So here we are near Grinder Rocks. We're on the west side of the peninsula now. Very different weather from what we had before, but it's a beautiful day in Antarctica. A little bit of snow, a little bit of wind, a little bit of wave, and we are about to go for a Zodiac cruise into the Grinder Rocks area. And in this area, we are now surrounded by a lot more ice than we were accustomed to on the east side, where we had volcanic landscapes and very little snow on many of the islands. But here, ice is everywhere. So I don't know if you can see this berg that's up in front of us. Can you see that there's sort of a bit of a ledge on the left-hand side? So that represents the water line before that iceberg rolled. So that iceberg has probably rolled multiple times, but you can see that it's basically tipped over by roughly, what, 60, 70 degrees from where it used to be. So anytime that you see the smooth surface, you know that that part of the berg was underwater at some point. And so it's important to remember that icebergs are constantly melting faster below the surface than they are above the surface, because water has a much higher heat capacity than air, and so it's much better at melting than the air is. Does that make sense? Yeah, so here we've got a beautiful iceberg. You can see it's rounded, which means it's already flipped a few times, and those vertical lines that you see are made by air bubbles that are coming out from the melting ice and making their way to the surface. So they make these vertical tracks. We're seeing the blue coming out of this iceberg because the white light that went in had the red end absorbed, and when the light goes into the iceberg and then comes back out again, it comes back out bluish.
At Grinder Rock, we went on a Zodiac cruise, but the dive team went underwater to see what we could find. And what we found was a lot of really cool stuff. So the environment was sort of a combination of kelp, which created a protected habitat for things like sponges and sea cucumbers. And then barren rock that was covered in an encrusting algae, which is food and life for limpets. One of the reasons that there's so much life here is because the water holds more oxygen, and it's filled with nutrients because all of the summer sunlight creates this beautiful algal bloom. which means that the phytoplankton bloom, and then all of the life here is plenty of food. All of the phytoplankton and all of the zooplankton are not only food for the small invertebrates, but they're the reason that we have such large megafauna here, the penguins and the seals, and especially the whales. To more whales.
Early this morning, as we were traversing the Gerlache Strait, we were awoken at 4 a.m. by killer whales. They were type B killer whales. There were probably at least 30 of them circling the ship, having a great time, spy hopping. It was an incredible way to get woken up, and the sun was rising over the mountains. It was just a beautiful start to the day. And now we're at Port Charcot, where Charcot overwintered in his first expedition. And we are surrounded by ice. We're gonna go kayaking. We're gonna go up, see the cairn that Charcot left behind, see some Gentoo penguins. It's gonna be a great day. Gentoos are the third species of penguin we've had a chance to see. They're the largest of the three and the third largest penguin overall. They get the bronze medal. They are, unlike adelies and chinstraps, they're not krill specialists. They will also eat fish. They're a little more generalist. Because they're generalists and they're more willing to explore to new colonies with their mate, they are spreading out as the climate changes here in the western peninsula of Antarctica to new colonies and growing in population.
So this is Antarctica. Now a lot of people think of the Arctic and the Antarctic as being essentially the same, big, cold, white places at the end of the planet. Yeah, they're both very cold, they've both got lots of snow and ice, but in fact they're very, very different. Whereas the Arctic is a frozen ocean, Antarctica is a rock continent covered with a thick layer of snow and ice, and that makes a big difference. But they're both faced with a lot of the same problems and challenges, and we need to look after them in the same way because they're of similar importance to the wider environmental processes that we all depend on for life on Earth. The thing that I think makes Antarctica different to other destinations is that nobody comes back from Antarctica unchanged in some way. Nobody comes back from seeing a place like this and goes, nah, that was all right. You know, they come back feeling that they've had their perspective altered. And that's a really powerful thing. And so when you come to Antarctica, you find that you return with a different view on life in general. And we can make use of that. You know, you return from Antarctica as an ambassador for this place. There are plenty of battles that we need to fight to keep the continent of Antarctica as special as it is right now. And everybody here that has seen this returns with a really important part to play in making sure that future generations can come here and have the same perspective-altering experience, brilliant, wonderful time that we've had this last couple of weeks.
Ladies and gentlemen, this has been a fantastic trip that we have had together. We've had really great wildlife encounter together. This is the last pristine area on the planet. I do hope that you will bring back this place in your heart, that you have learned a lot traveling with us, and we will be very pleased to say you welcome back on board again.